report regarding posting of agenda.
The agenda for this meeting was posted on Wednesday, September 30th, on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Great. Would you please all stand and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Next agenda item is approval of minutes from the August 19th regular meeting. Were there comments or corrections from anyone?
I move that we accept the minutes.
Second.
A motion and support to accept the minutes. Please call roll.
Commissioner Ships,
Aye.
Commissioner Torgerson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lee,
Aye.
Chair Kane.
Aye. And a vote of 4-0, the minutes of August 19th, 2009 were approved. Item 5 is oral communications, discussion, limited items not a part of the agenda. I have no cards for that. So we'll enter into agenda item 6A, zoning appeals. This is appeals under old business. It's 2425 Cascadia Drive. It's case number PCUP 2005-054. It's the appellant is the Chevy Chase Association, but I understand that all parties involved would like to continue this to a date uncertain. It's to take it off calendar.
Take it off calendar, Mr. Chair. And members of the commission, we'd prefer to take this planning department would prefer to take it off the calendar. The applicant, if you'll notice, he sent a letter saying he would like to continue it till December 8th. But we've had this experiences here where the submittal of information is so late that we're unable to make the continued dates, and so then we have to continue it again, and you'll notice there'll be a series of continuances, and that's part of the problem is that the applicant will submit something within just a few weeks ahead of time, but we need more time to analyze it, for the public to comment, to prepare a staff report, and get it out to all the commission members. And that's not happening. So we were thinking we'd take it off calendar, get that information in, analyze it, then set up a hearing, prepare the staff report, and submit it to you all. So that's the planning department's. And I believe I spoke, I don't want to speak for them, but I believe that the Chevy Chase Homeowners Association is in agreement with that.
I have a card here, and if you would step forward, Mr. Barnes, or Barnes. Barnes. Thank you.
Larry Barnes, President of the Chevy Chase Homeowners Association, and we would support Chris's recommendation to take off calendar.
All right. Very good. Anything else from you, Chris?
At this time, no, sir.
All right. Comments from commissioners? Seeing none, could we have a motion? And I'll presume that the motion will be to take off calendar.
Well, move to take off the calendar.
Continue.
Continue. At a later date when it's ready to.
If we could use the language, we'd like to take it off calendar with public notice to follow. Is that correct, Laura?
Okay, move off the calendar.
Just take it off calendar. Or just take it off calendar.
Okay, that's right. We can move to take it off the calendar.
If you take it off calendar, then we would have to renotice it to reschedule.
Okay, I just want the applicant to know that.
I second it.
Motion and support to continue the appeal at 2425 Cascadia to a date uncertain without just taking off calendar. Call roll, please.
Commissioner Ships,
Aye.
Commissioner Torgerson,
Abstain.
Aye.
and Chair Kane.
Aye, and a vote of 3-0 with one abstention. 2425 Cascadia Drive, case number PCUP 2005-054, is continued but taken off calendar. All right, moving along. The next case we have is conditional use case permit PCUP 2008-047. This was continued from June 17th and August 19th. It's a request to continue the item to a special meeting in the Planning Commission on October 21st, starting at 4 p.m. without further notice. Staff comments?
We support this request. This item was originally going to be on our previous meeting on September 16th. However, we didn't have a quorum, so the item was automatically continued to today. And now we have a request to continue it to a date certain at a special meeting on October 21st when all parties would be able to attend, and we support that request.
All right, any comments? I have no cards on that matter. Still. Any comments from commissioners, or may we have a motion?
I move that we continue this case number PCUP 2008-047 to the date certain of October 21st, 2009.
Second.
Motion and support. Roll, please.
Commissioner Sheets,
Aye.
Commissioner Torgerson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lee,
Aye.
and Chair Kane.
Aye, and a vote of 4-0, conditional use permit case PCUP 2008-047 is continued to October 21st. Okay, I don't know about the rest of you, but I need to work through the stack a moment before we introduce the next one. Okay. All right, before we introduce the next one, since I believe we're probably going to actually hear this one, I need to read a few introductory remarks. Zoning administration appeal items are public hearings. The Planning Commission will consider testimony from the appellant, applicant, staff, and any member of the public wishing to speak. If you wish to speak, please fill out a card and present it to the recording secretary. Testimony given at the zoning administrator's hearing should be repeated because the Commission does not review tapes of those hearings. Decisions rendered today will be based on the evidence presented at this hearing and the evidence in the file, including appeal documents, staff reports, and letters received. Individuals speaking today should therefore present all the evidence which they may wish this Commission to consider. I don't know that I need to read the rest of it into the record. It's basically just the process. Okay, so we're moving on to setback variance case PVAR 2008-017. The applicant has submitted a request to continue this item to the regular meeting on November 18th of 2009. The location is 1149 Cordova Avenue. The appellant is Hassan Hagani, Director of Planning. The applicant is AMAC Group, and it is an appeal of the zoning administrator's approval of a setback variance legalizing 2 wood gates in the street front and side setbacks when gates are not permitted in the minimum 25-foot street front and 6-foot street side setbacks. The appeal was filed to clarify the zoning administrator's decision. Could we have a staff report on this and what staff believe or feels about the request to continue?
Well, we received a request to continue. However, this request came in after notices were sent to residents, and we believe you may have residents here who would like to testify, or we would request at least to give applicants or interested parties who are here a chance to testify since they are here today. And the applicant was given notice before the public notice was mailed out. He only requested a continuance after those notices had been mailed. And the decision is up to you. That would just be a staff request.
All right. Commissioners, any opinion? I'm inclined to continue and hear the matter.
Yeah, I'd like to hear also.
I feel the same.
All right. Well,
Likewise.
I'm sorry?
Likewise.
Okay. Well, then we will continue on. We've introduced the matter. Let's have staff overview then, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of Commission. As you mentioned, before you is case number PVAR 2008-017, located at 1149 Cordova Avenue. An appeal of an approved setback variance to legalize the 2 wood gates has been filed. The wood gates are located in the street front and the street side setback areas. The subject property is in the R1 zone, where the street front setback would be 25 feet and the street side setback would be 6 feet. The appeal was filed to clarify the zoning administrator's decision and the contradicting statements. The site is located in the southwest corner of Cordova Avenue and Stocker Street with hedges along the property line on both street frontages. There is a pool in the street side setback area with a wall enclosing it, which was built in 1979, and a setback variance was granted for this structure back in 1978. The appellant is requesting a formal clarification of the statements made in the decision letter and the follow-up letter sent to one of the neighbors, Mr. Brian Schrader's, and the statements were regarding the pilasters. In the decision letter, zoning administrator makes it clear that the existing pilasters with walkway lighting will be lowered to less than 5 feet to comply with code. And in the subsequent letter sent to Mr. Schrader, the zoning administrator states that the existing pilasters were part of the approved gates. This, along with the statements in the decision letter, creates a confusion, and the appellant is asking for a formal clarification. Staff agrees that there are contradicting statements made in the decision letter and the follow-up letter sent to the neighbor, and that they should be clarified. Just for the record, a second letter was sent to Mr. Schrader on June 5, indicating that the intent was that the pilasters were not part of the approved gates, and as long as they're lower than 5 feet, they would be code compliant. If the Planning Commission wishes to solely focus on the clarification sought in the appeal and to uphold zoning administrator's decision with further clarification, then staff recommends that the zoning administrator includes a sentence in the decision letter that clearly states that the pilasters are not part of the approved gates if they're lower than 5 feet, because they do not require a variance. Now, that's recommendation number one, which, as you can see in your staff report, we have two recommendations. This is the first one that I just went over and sort of gave you a brief overview. And I would like to go over the second portion of the staff report and give you an alternative, and that would be up to the Commission to decide which way you want to go. When the appeal was filed, we also received a letter from Mr. Brian Schrader, who, in his letter, it was written in June of 2009, submitted in June of 2009, and in the letter he is opposing the project and the approval of the project. Staff believes that certain arguments presented in the letter are legitimate arguments and should be taken into consideration. For one, zoning administrator's findings was that the intent of the code is to maintain open vistas and open frontages in R1 zone, and especially in the front and street side setback areas, but it has already been broken by the existing hedge. Of course, these zoning administrators' findings are much, much longer. I'm just trying to summarize and give you a quick, brief overview of it. Mr. Schrader's argument to this specific finding is that if the intent of the code is to maintain open vistas and there are no other regulations against the hedges, which in this current situation actually breaks that open vista intent of the open vistas, then people who do have open hedges should be able to put illegal gates and get an approval for it. That's Mr. Schrader's argument against that particular finding. And of course, we know most of the time those hedges are along the property lines. Staff does agree with this statement, and moreover, in the original staff report, the zoning administrator's analysis included that not all of the findings can. In the original staff report that staff wrote for the zoning administrator back in 2009, March of 2009, staff's analysis included that not all the findings can be made. So initially, staff did not recommend an approval as well, but we did recommend an alternative of using transparent materials for the gates to provide that open vista and sort of keep within the intent of the code. And one other findings in this in the decision letter that zoning administrator composed, it talks about the uniqueness of the property and the fact that it's in the corner and that the existing house with the garage are pushed back, which eliminates the privacy at the backyard and provides no sense of privacy, no space for backyard and no sense of privacy at the front. And that is one of the findings that zoning administrator included for the uniqueness of the property, basically mainly that it's in the corner and the configuration of the existing buildings on the lot. Neighbors' argument against this is that there's an exact same condition right across the street from this property with with exact same lot configuration, being in the corner, and the building layouts and where they are located on the lot. Staff did more research and found out that there are actually more than just one similar conditions in the immediate neighborhood, and this simply does not make the property unique. In addition, there was, as I mentioned, there was a variance approved back in '78 to allow that privacy in that pool area, which included a wall and a pool in the front setback area, to allow for that, which is a privilege that not everybody in that neighborhood has currently. So, staff does concur with certain points of the letter and believes that the property is not unique by just being in the corner. As I mentioned, staff's original recommendation was to not approve the proposal and recommended an alternative to provide transparent materials for the two gates in order to keep with the intent of the code and maintain the open vistas at the front. Although this case was appealed to clarify the discrepancy between the two letters, the zoning administrator's decision letter and the letter sent to Mr. Brian Schrader, staff also would ask the Planning Commission to reconsider the findings made by the zoning administrator and overturn the decision. So it is, or you can actually just stay with the appeal, which was just solely looking for clarification. It is entirely up to you. That wraps up my...
All right. Any questions at this moment from commissioners for staff?
Yes, I have one question. Your 1978 approval was just for the pool section only?
Yes, the
But the
pool and the
variance-
wall surrounding the pool.
And, you know, I noticed that it's really, hedges are, you know, really tall. Is there ordinance with the height limitation on the hedges?
There isn't any, and as a matter of fact, I checked with traffic and transportation because issues were raised regarding the visibility when you approach the corner in your car, and I spoke with traffic and transportation department, and they said that there weren't any because the hedges are so far back from the actual street, because the sidewalks are pretty wide there. But there is no limitations or regulations regarding the height of the hedge.
And this hedge is on their property, not in the public right-of-way, correct?
Correct. Based on the information given to us by the applicant, that would be correct.
All right.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was going to say, I didn't see a copy of the appeal in the package. I would like to read what was written, paperwork was filed.
I am sorry, I thought it should have been included, but... Straight from my phone.
This appeal is only to request clarification with regard to the palace.
Right. For purposes of clarification, however, if one point gets appealed, the entire thing is in play, is it not? Mr. Garcia?
That's correct. The appeal was of the decision.
So as narrow as the appeal is, it's for the whole thing.
Essentially, the Planning Commission has authority to approve or deny or modify the decision of the zoning administrator. So yeah, it's the Commission can take action in that regard.
All right.
Make sense?
It does.
Okay.
Mr. Sheets, you had a question?
I wasn't clear about the hedge and the legality of the hedge as far as being in the setback.
Go ahead.
I think
The
it's
hedges
legal.
are allowed
Yeah,
in
there's no-
it's live vegetation. It
He's
is
right.
allowed to be in the front setback.
Yeah, and it's something we may want to talk about further, but basically, you can grow a plant of any size you want in your setback. Okay, any other questions for staff at this time? Seeing none, the appellant has up to 15 minutes to present, in this case, his case.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. As mentioned by staff, the appeal that I filed was simply to clarify certain aspects of the decision, and specifically the height of this pilasters that were not clear from the decision letter, and then were further less clear after a clarification letter was sent out. So I thought it was appropriate for the Planning Commission to officially amend the decision to make sure that the file has clarity with regard to the pilasters. If the commission would be inclined to take staff's recommendation as to how to clarify the decision, that would be satisfactory to me. However, if the Planning Commission would like to take further action based on the letter that you received, I would have no objection to that. I'm here to answer any questions you'd like to ask. Thanks.
Okay, questions for the appellant?
So your appeal is to make sure that the language is written so that all pilaster that's there is, within that height limitation that you have
That's correct.
indicated. Okay.
And if the findings are that some of the pilasters need to stay, I would like that connection to be made clearly on the record.
How do you rationalize putting these large, solid structure gates in a setback where code only allows for live vegetation? I mean, I've seen the findings, but there's plenty of examples in this city where that has not been permitted.
I think that that would probably be a question more appropriate for the zoning administrator who actually made those findings.
Fair enough.
Any other questions?
I see none at this time, perhaps during your rebuttal.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, the applicant has time to make his or her case as it relates to this variance finding. Is an applicant present? Have you filled in the cards, sir? Okay, I'll take the testimony, but when you're finished, you need to fill one of these in for the record, okay? All right. And you're representing the applicant in this case?
I'm representing GAMAC Group,
Okay.
and I would just like to request...
And I'm sorry, your name, please.
My name is Habert Minas Masihi.
All right.
I represent the AMAC Group, and I would just like to request the extension on the appeal, please.
Well, we'll take that under consideration. We talked about that at the start of the process, and based on notification and everything else, we decided that we wanted to proceed. So we understand your request, but we decided to proceed with the hearing. Is there anything that you want to add besides that as it relates to the testimony being taken, the gates, that type of thing, what the city is specifically appealing?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. And the cards are right there. Just fill it in, and if you'd hand it to the clerk.
Thank you.
Okay. And then we do have some other individuals' cards to speak. I have one from Brian Schrader.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Hello, members of the Commission. My name is Brian Schrader. I live at 1141 Cordova Avenue, 2 doors down. I'm a homeowner and resident of Glendale and a member of the Rossmoyne Mountain Homeowners Association. And I wrote the June 12th letter that Mr. Nazarian mentioned or alluded to in his analysis. The illegal construction that created what you see behind you is it's over 2.5 years old. It was first documented by Neighborhood Services in March of 2007. It's been heard 3 times by the zoning administrator. This is the 4th hearing on the matter. The massive wooden doors that are referred to as gates are against code. Zoning administrator allowed the variance that the applicant filed to allow them. My letter found fault in each of the four necessary findings to grant the variance, and I'm happy to quickly summarize what they are and refer to her letter. There's two letters, my letter and her ruling letter. She had 4 paragraphs that correspond to the 4 findings necessary. There are errors, specific errors in each one. She states in the first paragraph that the existing hedges and non-conforming gate between 2 pilasters, which are along Cordova, one of the streets, and the 2 pilasters along Stalker Street have existed on the property for many years. That's not true. They've existed since about 2007 when all of this matter began, but I've lived there for 6 years, and they certainly were not there. So when she says many years, unless she's talking about 2007 when neighborhood services first documented the illegal construction, then that's not true. There has been no proof entered to that. She states in paragraph Roman numeral 1, page 2, that in either instance, removing the gates would create a tunnel effect visually when viewing the house from the sidewalk into the front yard. This is not keeping with the intent of code. There are no laws in Glendale against hedges or restrictions on their height. I think that's already been discussed. There are laws in Glendale against fencing and gates within the setback areas, which these are. So the fact that the removal of the gates would cause a tunnel effect is in keeping with the intent of the code, and zoning administrator's finding of the opposite is incorrect. Simple fact. Zoning administrator states in paragraph Roman numeral 2 on page 3 that a 2-story 1924 residence facing one street and a detached garage facing another street are unique conditions applicable to the property. As Mr. Nazarian mentioned, there are houses on corners all over this area that are laid out exactly the same way. So there's a flawed statement, reasoning, conclusion, whatever you might want to call it. The zoning administrator states in paragraph 3, page 3 of her ruling, the existing gate and pilasters and their location, the existing hedges, existing walls, fences within the street side setback area, and the existing buildings and configuration on the site have existed for many years. Again, many years. Since 1924, she says, which is when the house was built. This is just not true. When the house was built in 1924, of course, nothing was there, and to say the opposite is just not true. She says then in zoning paragraph 4, page 3, that the intent of code is to provide and maintain open space. However, the existing hedges has already broken and has taken away from this requirement. Well, that doesn't make any sense either. Every homeowner who has planted a hedge right up against their sidewalk should then be allowed to build any kind of illegal structure they want there. This surely is not the intent of the Glendale Code. Allowing for gates on the principle that a homeowner is allowed to have a hedge is a runaround of the City of Glendale's clear policy in favor of open space in yards. There are no other homes in Glendale that have these types of gates and structures in the security perimeter. Hedges are allowed with no height requirement. That's the way it is right now. And there are other homes with sidewalk side hedges in this area of Glendale. All of them have some sort of opening that creates the tunnel effect. They're walkways that allow you to access the house. None of them have heavy wood barrier gates like this does. She repeatedly states in her ruling that the existing hedge and structures have been in existence at their current location for many years. That's from her summary, and that's just not true. So errors exist in each of the 4 sections of 30, 43, 30 findings of fact that she needs to find to grant the variance. So there's flaws in every one of them. And of course, I'm just addressing her ruling and to overturn the granting of the variances for the gate. I'm not addressing any of the other problems because you're all busy guys, and this, like I said, this has been going on for over 2.5 years, so I hope that at least puts some definition and context to it. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I've lived there for 6 years, and I've been there since the beginning. I'm probably the only one in this room that knows everything about that and is willing to tell you the truth completely about it.
Okay, questions for the speaker? I have a question. The photographs that were attached show another gate being removed and a new gate being inserted, at least as I understand the photos.
Right. On the Cordova side, the biggest gate, there was a previous gate there. And as far as I know, there was never another gate on the Stalker side. On the Cordova side, there was a previous gate.
Okay.
When it actually was put in, I don't know the exact date, and I know there is a photo showing a pre-existing gate. That gate was something that you could still access the house. The current situation is a barrier gate. Fire and police wouldn't have access to the house in the case of an emergency or something. It's a secure perimeter now to this property. And the previous gate, you could reach over if you wanted to, the police if they needed to, or fire. It wasn't a kind of barrier gate that's taller than the average person. So there was a previous gate on the Cordova side. Again, not many years ago, certainly not 6 years ago when I moved into my house. It wasn't there then.
The gate that was just recently replaced wasn't there 6 years ago, you said?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. The big gate that's there now went up in March of 2007, and that's when all the other structures, and there's other structures with security cameras and so forth as part of the construction there.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. King.
I have a card from Lila Ramirez.
Good evening, Commissioners. Leila Ramirez, President, Ross Moines Homeowners Association. I am also the zoning chair for the Glendale Homeowners Coordinating Council. We, as the Homeowners Association of Ross Moines Mountain, support the recommendations in the alternative to the Planning Commission to overturn the original approval. And the argument set forth in the staff report of the March 18th, which is, we spoke to that at that hearing, and at that hearing, the applicant did not make any findings. The only thing that was submitted at the end of the hearing were 2 photographs. We didn't get to see them. I think that this is a de novo hearing, and I verified that it would be. And I think this procedural evidence, I think those photos should have been submitted so that staff could evaluate them and verify that they existed. And the Ross Moines Mountain Homeowners Association is on record with the city and is committed to the preservation of existing streetscape. While we do not fundamentally oppose expansion projects, we are committed to maintaining the current level of conformity within our residential neighborhoods. The intrusion into the setbacks breaks continuity of the surrounding setbacks and conflicts with the intent, the spirit, and the objectives of the zoning code. While hedges conform to the open space requirements of the zoning code, installation of wood gates are strictly prohibited by the same zoning code. Contrary to the statements in the report that hedges have already broken the green space, that is not true. Hedges do not break up open vistas. In fact, the hedges are allowed. The required findings were not presented as I stated, and instead we got the photos. We believe that the testimony is the basis for granting the variance to allow the wooden gates in front of the side yards. That's very clear in the letter. It says because they were existing gates, been there for many years. Well, there was no testimony other than the applicants at the very end that stated that they had been for many years. At our meeting of our board, members of our board stated that they, in fact, as neighbors, knew that those gates had not existed for many years. I had written a whole nice long thing for you, and it came up missing in the computer. But here are all the contradictions in this report. And if you go through it, and you'll see it. The previous gate, maintaining the modified gates, unique conditions, and then as they have physically existed for years, it contradicts so much. And then there, in the staff report, there is no copy of the 1978 variance. Generally, when you get a variance, it gives conditions, and you can't modify anything else. Well, we have had the modifications. And another concern that we had was the original publication of the original notice that was continued, and it stated, "The applicant for a setback variance to allow construction." I received this while I was away, and I got word about it when I got back from the neighbors, Mr. Bryan in particular. And so I went to just drive by and wondered what happened, and it's already constructed. So then I get a notice stating that, in fact, there was an error in the notice, and in fact, it should have been a variance to legalize. But in fact, in your report today is the copies of the staff's review of that project description, construction, installation, wire fencing, and they're asking for a conditional use permit. So then, there's three departments that reviewed them. All of them has major concerns, and see comments. The comments from Neighborhood Services. We recommend that you reject the application as containing incorrect representations on the property. Neighborhood Services cited the property owner for the modified columns and installation of an entry gate, in addition to the wire fence. These were not existing as represented on the plans. The original columns were much lower. The gateway door and columns would require a variance as well, since the modifications of these structures altered the original structures. That said, if you do approve the requested improvements, please be sure to exempt these other elements so that the code enforcement can proceed. And then when we went to the public hearing in March, I think it said, there's the indication here that it was not rerouted because there were no major concerns. There were, and they're part of this report. So that is a big concern that we have. And finally, I guess it's something that we just have to say and say again, that there is a practice in this city that, and I think it's been stated by council members in public and in the press, that it's easier to get forgiveness than permission. So we construct and go for the variance later. I think the intent of the variance ordinance is to allow you to issue these variances. But I don't think they should be constructed and then applied for, and that's become a practice, and it cannot be continued. In fact, one council member said it had to stop. So that is another main contention of our association, is that, in fact, this whole project was constructed, completed, and then the application for a variance was submitted. And in fact, the original application which said to allow, that was pooled. And then we received the backup. But the backup is conflicts with what your department stated.
Ms. Ramirez, let me ask you to summarize, please.
That's it.
Okay. Questions for the speaker? I actually have something. Earlier in your presentation, it seemed to me like you were suggesting that the applicant didn't present or make any case for findings, and staff was actually doing the work for them as it related to that? Is that a statement? That's what I heard you say.
I don't know if staff was doing the work for them or not. I'm just telling you that they did not present any findings. The zoning administrator asked them, to state their findings. And they were at a loss to what she was talking about, evidently. And the only thing was that they submitted these two photos and then testified that these gates existed for many years, which is, the basis, as you read the report, the basis for granting the legalization, I guess, of the two gates. It was determined that, in fact, if the gates were lowered, they don't need permits. So, the pilasters were lowered, so they don't need permits, so they can stay. But they are in the setback, and they were constructed illegally. And they could have gone for the variance before they constructed, as they indicated initially, except that it just seemed like it's an end run, and it's just something that's very common.
Thank you, Ms. Ramirez. For the record, we've also received two communications. One is a letter from Rich Ramirez titled Observations of Gate Facing Cordova. As I read it, I don't know that he's taking a stand either way. It's basically observations. And we have a letter supporting the applicant in being able to get the variance from a Dr. and Mrs. Sadri. Now, I think it would also be appropriate at this time that we ask the hearing officer, which I believe is you, Ms. Fuentes, to entertain questions from us. You might perhaps have an introductory remark, I'm not sure.
Yes. Mr. Chair, members of the board, first, I would like to just clarify what happened at the original public hearing. And because I didn't want the staff to look like we didn't do our part or we didn't correct the errors that happened. The original public hearing summarized the request to just construct a fence, and the case planner thought it covered everything that was included in the application form. At the actual public hearing that was called to my attention, that it's not only one item or two items, but there were like 5 or 6 different items that should have been addressed at the with the public notice. So we took the case off calendar and re-noticed. Then the second public notice was sent to include whatever was supposed to be included in the public hearing. That's why in my decision letter, you will also read the note that says the original variance application consisted of 5 variance items. However, the case planner was able to convince the applicant to correct and remove the other items. So I put in there that the existing 4-foot wire fence, the 6-foot-high freestanding pilaster with camera, and the 6-foot-high decorative ladders will be removed. And then I went on to continue and said the existing pilasters with walkway lighting will be lowered to less than 5 feet to comply with code. And at the public hearing, we made sure the applicant, the property owner, and everybody is aware that this will be done and they will be complied with. So one of the speakers mentioned that there was no finding presented at the public hearing. The applicant testified, the property owner herself testified, the ex-husband, as far as I can remember, of the applicant also came in and testified, and there was another representative from the AMAC group that came to the public hearing. They all testified, they presented photos. Neighborhood Services was also present at the public hearing, and we also had Traffic and Transportation so that they could clarify the issue regarding the hedges. And at that time, the applicant testified that when she bought the property, the pilasters with the gate facing Cordova were existing. Then they submitted the photo, and then the other pilasters on the other side facing Stocker were also existing. Have they not made some modifications to the existing gate and the pilasters? They would have, nobody would have been there to issue them a citation or anything. They did admit to the fact that they started the construction of modifying and increasing the height of the pilasters because they didn't think they needed a permit. But Neighborhood Services testified that they were stopped. As a matter of fact, the workers continued working. They were again stopped by Neighborhood Services, and all these facts and information were presented at the public hearing. And to clarify the issue about the statement of error, I just wanted to make it very clear that the pilasters will be lowered to below 5 feet in height. Hence, they are not part of any approval or any decision approval that I made. So those are the items I wanted to just clarify. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for Ms. Fuentes?
Yeah, can you enumerate the other 4 items you said that they were going to take care of? In other words, when you say remove,
They have a wire
about-
fence behind the hedge.
okay, you're talking about removing the wire fence, not removing that item from the consideration of the variance.
Out of 5 variance items from the original application,
had they not increased the height of the pilasters and changed the gate, they would not be even before me for a variance. Why wouldn't they if somebody in the neighborhood had complained? It's not an acceptable
Because
structure.
the pilasters that they had there were lower than 5 feet before, and we allowed.
18 inches is what the limitation is in code.
No, we do allow freestanding pilasters less than 5 feet in height within the front setback area.
Because they are lighting a walkway or a driveway, you can have those.
If they're lighting.
If they have lighting for walkway or
don't have
driveway.
lighting.
That is why one of the items at the corner of
Was the
lot-
lighting?
Questions, before they did a modification on this pilaster, did they have a gate on it before?
They showed it in the picture. It has the gate. And nobody was able to present any other information different than that.
Since it exceeded 6 feet in height at one point, did they get a building permit?
They were caught increasing the height of the pilasters. That's why Neighborhood Services issued them the violation notice.
So they didn't get, nor have they ever gotten a permit.
The
And
previous
again, now that they're under 6 feet, or that they would be under 6 feet, they don't necessarily need a permit.
not for the pilasters.
They will need
That's
an
why
electrical permit.
For electrical.
the variance
An
was
electrical permit?
Come again.
the variance was for
Sorry?
the 2 gates. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, okay. You said what?
They will need an electrical permit for the pilasters.
So after
for the
all this
wiring.
time, they still don't have an electric permit for work that's in place?
I believe they do not.
They will not be issued anything because they are still going through the public hearing process. We won't issue them
They
anything
wouldn't
else.
be able to. All right. That's a fair statement. Please,
Point
Mr.
of
Schiff.
clarification, I'm very confused, so I apologize if this is not a real clear question, but at what point through all of these confusing steps did the gate appear between the pilasters? And what approval was given relative to said gate, and the height of that gate and the type of that gate? How did it become part of this?
When Neighborhood Services went to their property, the workers were working on the pilasters and the gate. And when they were measured, they were more than 5 feet in height, so they were issued a violation notice.
So the violation was only relative to the pilasters, but nothing mentioned about the gate?
Well, I don't have a copy of the violation notice, but it should include everything that they have connected to the pilaster.
I just didn't, in the readings, I didn't notice any statement or comments relative to the gate specifically. I mean, as far as what we're following up on, what needs to be removed and what needs to be changed. And it seemed to me that the gate needs to be part of that, so I just wanted to be
Right.
clear.
The variance was only for the gate.
Okay.
The variance was only, if I may, the variance is only for the gate because the applicant indicated they intended to lower the pilaster to a height at which it would be permissible. Lamp posts are permitted in the setback areas if they are 5 feet high or less. They raise them above 5 feet high. If they take them back to 5 feet, then they don't need a variance for that. However, the solid gate would always need a variance, no matter the height.
Okay. And I'm confused by the sequencing, so I'm sure I'll work it out.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Fuentes at this time? Seeing none, all right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see, I guess procedurally, the applicant would have time for a rebuttal. I'm not sure if there's anything you want to add in terms of rebuttal time. All right. He's basically telling us no. Did you fill in a card? It hasn't been passed to me yet. Oh, you still have it. You need to turn it in to her. I'm sorry. Thank you. All right. The appellant, rebuttal time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. I actually do not have anything else to add. I must say that I think that I need to clarify my position with regard to the cases. As the planning director, I'm responsible for the preparation of the cases and the processing of the applications. However, the decision of the zoning administrator as an independent officer of the city remains with her, and I do not, as a rule, I do not interfere with those decisions. And the reason that I submitted this appeal was simply to make sure that the planning department's records have clear results and the public can actually access them and understand the decisions without much trouble. And in this case, there were some questions that came after the decision was issued that moved me to file the appeal because I did not want to, on my own, send a letter to add to the case, and I thought the best place for a decision that was made in the public to be clearly put on the record would be another public hearing. That was mainly the reason of my appeal. However, the staff who also prepared the original staff report for the zoning administrator, that staff report is always done under the direction of the planning director. So the planning director and the planning department's analysis are reflected in the staff report to the zoning administrator, but the zoning administrator is free to make a decision based on her understanding of the code. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Questions for the appellant? Seeing none at this time. I'm about to close the public hearing unless the commissioners know that they want to redirect or ask any other questions of a speaker, city staff, or anyone like that. Okay, we'll close the public hearing, enter deliberations. Who'd like to opine first?
I'll go.
Mr. Lee.
I think this probably is for another day, but, having the hedge without any height limitation bothers me a little bit, but I guess this is not, for discussion today. And to have a, obstruction of the view and to place the gate there does not, two wrongs does not make it right. And I have a great deal of a problem about how this gate was, from the beginning, it was originally approved. I really have a problem with that. Some variances are needed to accommodate some of the, I guess, hardships and things like that. In this case, this is just I think we need to go strictly by the code. That this is does not help or does not improve the property values or the neighborhood. I am against having the gate there, and if the pilaster needs to stay there, it needs to come down to 5 feet.
Mr. Torgerson?
Okay, I'll just.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Yes, I am ready.
I wasn't sure.
Okay. I didn't mean to wave my hand before you were finished.
Yes.
Mr. Torgerson.
Okay, looking at this as strictly a de novo hearing on the matter of a variance for a gate, with the other four items off the table, because the other four items are between the applicant and neighborhood services, and they have to lower the pilasters, and all of the building code issues are outside of this consideration at the moment. And if we focus on it being a variance for a gate, personally, I cannot make all four of the findings. Finding number 2, there are exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property involved or the intended use that do not apply generally to other property in the same zone or neighborhood. I haven't seen any. I've seen testimony and evidence to the contrary, so I could not make all of the four findings. So therefore, I would have to vote against the variance. And my question for staff would be, there was a recommendation that the zoning administrator consider the replacement of the existing solid wooden gates with decorative wrought iron gates, which are open. What would you need a variance for doing something like that, for putting an open wrought iron gate between the two pilasters, Mr. Foy?
Yes, it would still need a variance. That was in case the zoning administrator approved the variance.
Gotcha. Okay.
That was definitely has more fully.
Okay, well, then that's basically where I stand, is I could not make all four findings.
All right, Mr. Sheets.
You heard pretty much where I stand. The whole process seems to be awkward to me, probably because maybe I can't fragment the items and the components as well as Lee, but...
It was very confusing the way we got here.
Yeah, and so if I just look at it as the gate, then it makes it simple enough for me to state that I would support denying it. But it seems to me that this whole process needs to start over again from the beginning and be done correctly, and it makes it difficult for me to try to decide on the gate when we're dealing with the pilasters, or the pilasters when we're not dealing with the gate, and that just makes it an awkward process, which I can't even imagine what that does to the applicant. So, just based on those facts and those understandings or lack thereof, I would plan on denying the motion, or the variance.
Thank you, Mr. Sheets. Well, it is kind of interesting that from a procedural basis, something that's relatively narrow comes in front of us and opens up the entire case. For my part, if this had come to us, and since it is now the entire case, I echo pretty much what my fellow commissioners have said. I won't belabor it and talk about each of the findings and not being able to make them, but in general, I think it's a self-imposed hardship, and above all, looking at the objectives of the ordinance, I'm just astounded that I do not think the objectives of our ordinance are to take hedges, which I think probably need to be looked at a little bit more by city staff, with the idea that these hedges are becoming barrier walls. They may be living, but they're barrier walls. And now we're slapping an actual barricade in front of them and creating what amounts to a fortress. And that is not my interpretation or of what the objectives of the ordinance are. So I am totally opposed to the idea of a gate being within the setback. So I think we're pretty much unanimous in our position on it. I don't know that there was actually a motion that totally denies the variance.
There are two motions, or an alternate.
If there is, if someone would like to, I'm sorry.
I'd like to make a comment if I can before
Certainly.
we finish. This whole issue, in my mind, of what seems to be an effort of people to try to either they're being confused and going beyond what the codes and rules allow, or knowingly doing that, is an issue in our city, probably an issue in many cities. And I want to say this carefully because I'm really not pointing blame as much as I'm trying to clarify what my thought process is on how we follow up. But I've seen numerous issues where a violation or a perceived violation is occurring, and neighborhood services has been called to go out. And I personally have some instances where that process is very long and very cumbersome, sometimes even to get it scheduled. And during the time that you wait for the person to respond or the group to respond, the violation is done. The effort is done. And so the person moves forward, or the family or the business moves forward thinking, well, I'm okay, which is not true. And then you compound that by the fact that the whole inspection process done by neighborhood services is truly cumbersome and awkward and is perceived by at least me and people that I know to be insufficient and inadequate. And I've had many conversations with the supervision in neighborhood services, and it's been made very clear to me that there are legal issues and there are directions and there are guidances guides that they have to follow, which take a lot of time. And I think something needs to be done about that issue, because these kinds of things are going to continue to happen, and we're going to continue to deal with them. And we're hurting both parties. We're hurting the applicant and the appellant, and we're confusing everybody. I'm still not sure what happened on this case, but I guess I have some concerns about how easy it is for people to go out and do what they want. And then when you use the step that's supposed to correct that, it doesn't work. It never gets off the ground. It's like a cartoon character spinning their wheels. And that troubles me. It causes the kind of things that the Homeowners Coordinating Council, homeowners associations, neighbors, and everybody, it creates animosity that doesn't need to be there. What we really want to do is it okay or is it not okay, and how do we fix it? How do we streamline this? I think what I'm asking is, how do we streamline that process? How do we make it smoother? And how do we just make things clear in people's minds? So anyway, I'm sorry, long-winded. This is just a good example of what I think will continue unless we address that issue.
All right. Any other comments from the commissioners, or I would entertain a motion, please?
I'll move, but I'd like to make some modification to the motion here. So it refers to the letter of June 12, 2009, but if you look at this letter, then we have to really validate all this, the findings and conditions in this letter, and some of it I don't know if it's been validated, so I really do not like to refer to that.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission.
Mr. Garcia.
Seeing that, or hearing that the direction of the Commission is to deny the variance, at the end of the day, the Commission has to make the findings, either it has to make the determination that it can't make the findings or has to make the findings. In this case, it's making the determination that it cannot make the findings granting a variance. But nevertheless, the motion has to contain some information why those findings cannot be made. So rather than perhaps referring to a letter that was provided by Mr. Schrader, the motion should include why particular findings can't be made. For instance, I heard Mr. Torgerson speak to not being able to make finding number 2 related to exceptional circumstances. I heard the chair reference the fact that he couldn't make the finding on hardship because the hardship was self-induced. So I think that perhaps staff can walk through the individual findings and state on the record what those findings would be. Anytime you deny a variance or deny a CP, it's still a good practice to make the findings in reverse, in essence saying, I can't make this finding for this reason. And so perhaps if you want, staff can walk you through. I think I heard, at least on the first 2 findings, I heard comments that the Commission can't make those 2 findings.
So how much detail, Mr. Garcia, do you want in a motion, which if we wrote down all the reasons for not being able to make the 4 findings one at a time, we'd probably have a paragraph per, and it would probably take a half an hour worth of wordsmithing on our part to do that.
Well, actually, Mr. Foy, I think, was just writing a couple notes down based on your comments already, and Not sure if Mr. Lee had an
Yeah,
additional question.
even though it is, we're going right to the ordinance, the code saying that this is not allowed, and we're stating that, you still need to find the findings?
Yes, just for the sake of the record, so that in the case that the applicant appeals, the record is clear as far as what the Planning Commission based their decision on. So I think, without further ado, I'll turn it over to Mr. Foy, and he can...
All right, well, let me just interject then, and Mr. Lee, as you hear what Mr. Foy comments on, if you're comfortable with that, continue making the motion that you were about to. If there's something you want to add, or if you have difficulty, let's just speak up and let's see what we can accomplish. Mr. Foy, you have heard what we have said, and in the efforts to complete the process, there were some things you were going to try to confirm that we thought?
Yes, sir. I would just begin by saying that the findings that you need to deal with are listed in the staff report and start on the bottom of page 3. So if there are any of these that you would like to make a finding on that I'm about to miss, you can feel free to add those. I heard 3 findings that couldn't be made. The first finding is about strict application of the ordinance resulting in unnecessary hardship. I'm paraphrasing what I heard the commission, and you can change this if you'd like. The request for the variance is self-imposed, or the necessity for the variance is self-imposed, and the application of the provisions of the ordinance would not result in unnecessary hardship.
I think that's certainly a fair restatement of my opinion.
Okay.
Great. The second I heard went to the second variance finding about exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property. And I heard at least one commissioner say there are no exceptional circumstances applicable to the property that do not apply generally to other properties within the same zone and neighborhood, as the property has neither a unique shape or configuration.
It's a fair statement. I do not consider the hedge to be an exceptional feature that makes it unique compared to the rest of the properties in the neighborhood, because anybody can plant a hedge.
So you're focusing on the hedge in regards to that statement, as opposed to the shape of the property itself?
Well, the shape of the property, there's other corner lots in the neighborhood.
Okay.
There's pictures of other similar houses. I don't see any difference between that property and the rest of the pictures in the neighborhood that were presented.
Okay, I can add a sentence to the end of the finding that says the presence of the hedge does not make the property unique.
Correct.
Exceptional.
In my opinion.
Exceptional, yeah.
Thank you. And the third I heard goes to the last findings concerning the objectives of the ordinance, and that would be granting the variance will be contrary to the objectives of the zoning ordinance, and that the zoning ordinance encourages open vistas in front and street yard setbacks in the R1 zone, and the solid gate is inconsistent with that objective.
Again, I think that summarizes my thoughts.
I think with that, Mr. Chair, a motion can be made incorporating the findings as stated by Mr. Foy, and then the Commission can move forward if it so desires.
Are you happy with that, Mr. Lee?
I think so. So let me give it a try here. Okay. I move that upon review and consideration of all materials and exhibits of a current record relative to setback variance case number PVAR 2008-017, located at 1149 Cordova Avenue, and after having conducted an appeal hearing on said matter, that the Planning Commission hereby overturns the zoning administrator's decision and denies the setback variance case number PVAR 2008-017 in accordance with the following findings. The finding number 1 is that the strict application of the provisions of the ordinance would not result in unnecessary hardship. The second finding is that there are no exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property involved or to the intended use of the development of the property that do not apply generally to the other properties in the same
zone or neighborhood, particularly in this case, the hedge does not make the property exceptional. And the finding number 3, someone help me out here.
We don't need to worry about 3.
Okay,
I think we
3 and 4. Okay, so 1 and 2 is suffice?
We don't, no, 4. We should move on to 4, which is the objectives of the ordinance. And I think, Mr. Lee, if you were comfortable with the way Mr. Foy stated it, you could simply say as presented a few moments ago by Mr. Foy.
And yeah, the finding number 4 is that as presented by Mr. Foy, enter that into as a finding 4.
Right. I have a motion.
I'll
Seeking
second.
support, and I have support. Could you call roll, please?
Commissioner Sheets.
Aye.
Commissioner Torgerson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lee.
Aye.
And Chair Kane.
Aye. On a vote of 4-0, setback variance case PVAR 2008-017 has been denied. We're moving on to old business. It's a use variance case, PVAR 2008-01. Oh, I'm sorry. Before I go on to that, under the provisions of Chapter 2.88 of the Glendale Municipal Code, any person affected by the decision of the Commission has the right to appeal said determination to the City Council if it is believed that the decision is in error or that procedural errors have occurred, or if there is substantial new evidence which could not have been reasonably presented at the hearing. An appeal must be filed within 15 days following the actual date of such action. Information regarding appeals and the appeal forms will be provided upon request and must be filed in the Permit Services Center, 633 East Broadway, Room 101, together with the required filing fee of $650 for such an appeal. Their telephone number is 818-548-3200. Now, we'll move on to the next case. And it's use variance case PVAR 2008-019 and parking use permit case PPUP 2009-001. The location is at 601 South Brand Boulevard. The applicant is AMAC Group. The property owner is Edmund Tavaradian, and it is a use variance for a 3,830 square foot physical instruction school located in the South Brand Boulevard specific plan area where the said use is not permitted. In addition, applicant is also requesting a parking use permit to provide the required 38 spaces off-site as required parking for the physical instruction school. The staff recommendation is to deny the use variance case and the parking use permit case. Could we have staff overview, please?
And I believe you've also received a request for continuance on this item. It came in at the last minute from the AMAC Group. And we just wanted to give you also a little background that this is also another code enforcement case that's been referred to the city attorney's office. And so we wanted to make it clear that the city's ready to proceed with this today, if that should be your desire. However, the applicant has requested a continuance. We just want to make it clear that if you do grant a continuance, it wouldn't be because of a city delay. It would be at the request of an applicant.
Okay. As far as that goes, on the previous case, we had something in writing.
There is something in writing for that one as well.
Well, that's what I'm confused about.
Should have been part of the pack.
But even if it's not in writing, I know I presume he's continuing to act as a representative of the applicant for this case as well?
Yes.
Okay. So even if there's nothing in writing, we can have at least the applicant's representative approach us and discuss whether, the reasons for continuance and so on. So procedurally, do I introduce the case, get staff overview, and then ask the applicant to come forward?
I think it's probably appropriate to introduce the case and then ask the applicant to come forward on the continuance. And then any other speakers who want to address just the continuance request should be allowed to do so.
Okay. So, we've done the introduction.
Okay.
So, at this point, let me ask you to come forward, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Habert Minas Musi, and I'm representing the AMAC Group. I would just like to request for a continuance or for you to give us 30 days time,
Okay, why?
because the principal of our company is currently out of town and not present.
Well, this was posted many weeks ago.
So we did ask for a continuance.
Many weeks ago. When did you first ask for a continuance on this case?
I believe more than 2 weeks ago.
Staff, do you have any knowledge of that?
I have a letter here dated September 29.
Okay, so 8 days ago. Did anyone talk to the individual writing that letter to find out why after notification, why after everyone's
The
prepared?
letter states that he's going to be out of town.
Nobody called him to find out what was going on? I mean, leaving on a Wednesday is a strange time to leave town.
This case was originally scheduled in September. I believe it was September 16th meeting, and the applicant at that time was noticed that because we did not have a quorum for that meeting, his item would be continued to the meeting tonight automatically, and he was notified of that.
See, my difficulty with this is it's been known for a long time. And a week ago, a principal in your organization sends a note, oh, I'm not going to be around. And we've got a situation where there's code enforcement things going on, there's rules that's been broken, there's a lot of questionable activity going on. And I sit back and I go, is this just another way to stall the situation for another month?
No, sir. I believe that the leave of absence was due to an emergency.
Okay, that's why I wish staff had called to get a little bit more on the background. I mean, it's easy to forgive if there's an emergency, okay? I mean, that's a real-life situation.
Thank you.
But, you know, without staff, when they get a letter following up going, hey, what's the deal? We've had this scheduled, and giving us that information.
Actually, the phone number we have is to the office. Calls were made, and we actually also tried to contact the owner of the business.
So you did try to see.
We tried. We contacted the attorney of the business owner as well through our city's attorney, Yvette. She let me know that actually the case, the preliminary hearing at the court is going to be held in January, early January. So they had pushed it way back to next year. I mean, way out forward to next year instead of having it this week, because that our initial impression was that they were going to have a court hearing this week. Apparently, it's not going to be here this week, and it's been scheduled for January.
But that's interesting, I guess, but it doesn't really have anything to do with not being able to reach the applicant or appellant.
Where I was going with that is that she was able to, because we could not get a hold of the owner or the applicant, but she was able to contact the attorney of the business owner, and she has indicated that she didn't even know about this continuance request, the attorney of the business owner.
So the attorney of AMAC Group.
Not AMAC Group, but the business owner of the Glendale Fight Club.
Okay, but they're not really a party to this.
Oh, well, the business owner is a part of this, obviously.
Oh, the property owner is. I mean, I understand the business owner is affected, but he's not a party to the action.
The use variance is for the Fight Club, and the person that's operating the Fight Club has an attorney who was contacted by our city's attorney.
Okay, that's Mr. Taverdian?
Exactly.
Edmund Taverdian?
So we have tried contacting, but in some cases we did not have contact information, such as the owner's contact information and the applicant. The letter we received, a couple of phone calls were made with no answers. So,
Mr. Chair, may I ask another stupid question, please?
You haven't asked one yet, so you certainly can continue.
So I too am getting confused.
It's a plot.
Mr. Taverdian, Edmund Taverdian, is the applicant for the matter that we are
correct
currently concerning ourselves with. Yet now I have a letter. Maybe I'm not looking at the correct letter. This was an AMAC Group Incorporated letter.
This was Cordova.
It was Cordova.
That's the only letter we got.
This is the other letter, also sent from AMAC Group. But in the
All right,
application, it states
so-
that applicant is Mr. Edmund Taverdian in care of AMAC Group. So
Take
that
care
is
of AMAC
why
Group, and that's why
we received a letter
the
from
letter for
AMAC
the
Group.
continuance is some other group that's representing Mr. Taverdian. Now, the person representing Mr. Taverdian in AMAC Group is Armic Shanazarians,
correct.
and Armic Shanazarians is the one that is out sick or out on a family
Yes.
leave or something? Okay. Then if I were Mr. Edward Taverdian, I'd be kind of annoyed that his representation has let him down, and we might be hearing his case tonight. What is the relationship between what we're hearing tonight and any legal issues?
Well,
Those should be totally
the
separate.
preliminary hearing at the court is pending the decision that could be made tonight, or at another time.
Okay, in
It's
other
pending
in other
your
words,
decision.
if we delay, all that does is push this preliminary hearing that the city has scheduled in January, it might push that out farther,
Correct. If we delay that far, correct.
which is not our
Mr. Chair,
problem.
Mr. Garcia.
I would just, let me state, I think if the hearing is in January, it could push it out only because there's the decision of the commission and then any potential appeal. But at the same time, we'd be, I can't speak for the prosecutor in the case, but I know we'd be going forward. So my suggestion is to just take the request at its face and not worry so much about the court case.
No, since it came up, I was just
Yeah.
trying to make that exact point, that that's really orthogonal to what we're trying to do tonight with
I mean,
one or
we-
the other. We should not
I know that
thinking about the
Ms.
hearing.
McKean pushed it out far enough, hopefully, so that all the administrative appeals could be had, but at the same time, we only have so much latitude that we're given by the court. So my suggestion to you is to, just take it at its face and decide whether or not you want to grant it or not, continuance or not.
Okay, the commission is directed to disregard anything that was said about the court case.
That's not what I said. But
That's kind of commission directions, though, isn't it?
Well, the chairman
Instructions,
said that,
rather?
so- Yes, sir.
It sounded like instructions to the commission. Yeah. All right. So anyway, so that's...
Those are my questions.
Okay, so it's out there. Fellow commissioners, what are your thoughts?
Mr. Chair,
Oh, Mr.
I just
Garcia.
thought maybe if there's any members of the public here that may want to speak on the continuance itself, you might want to grant
Probably
them the
should
right
do
to
that first. Thank you very much, Mr.
Merits, but just
Garcia.
on the continuance.
I don't know that there is. I'm just making sure. No, these are on another case. But thank you for making me double check. All right, so fellow commissioners, what are your thoughts?
No, I just need a clarification. Is zoning use certificate, we have a fight club here, we have Into the Jungle, and then we have a illegal wall. So for all three?
Well, Into the Jungle has terminated their operations already.
Okay.
It's been confirmed, but...
Yeah, well, there's a use variance, which, just to clarify, there's the matter in front of us is a use variance for it to be allowed that this property be used as a fight club. And that's totally independent of what might be next door, which is no longer there, this daycare thing, or any illegal walls. It's a use variance for can the applicant have this physical training fight club place
Correct.
in that spot.
Okay.
And the second issue is a parking use permit, which is how many parking places do they need and where do they get them? And how do they get them? Anyway, that was my clarification of that question. That helps. And I would like to explain on whether or not we continue when you're finished.
You just had a question, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Whoever would like to speak at this moment in terms of whether we hear it or continue it.
Okay, well, I was going to say that we don't have the owner, the applicant, or the official representative of the AMAC group, and even though it's kind of annoying to get requests like this at the last minute, in view of the complexity of this and the issues on the table, I think it would probably be a good idea to continue it until we can have both sides evenly represented,
Okay.
in my opinion.
Mr. Sheets, an opinion?
I agree for the same reasons Mr. Steinberg, but I think it's appropriate to do that because train of thought here. I apologize. Based on how convoluted this whole process has been, if we go forward now without having all the proponents be here, or opponents, then I don't think we would give due justice to the request. So I agree that we.
All right, Mr. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I agree that we should move it forward.
Mr. Lee?
These people are illegally operating, and I think there's enough case here for us to go ahead and listen. But I guess for the fairness of the people who needs to be here, so I guess I'll go along with the continuance.
Okay. My opinion is that it's very suspicious to me. There's so many apparently illegal things that have been done. Whether by mistake or intentional, I'm not going to comment. But it's very suspicious to me. And I will operate under the age-old rule of fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. So I'm willing to continue this, and I hope it's for the reasons as stated, that there was an emergency and everything's above board, and we'll set a date certain in November, and all I can say is I hope people come prepared so that we can hear it in a full and open and complete situation. So that said, let's make a motion. What do we have open in November?
The first meeting in November is November 4th, and the second meeting in November is November 18th.
What's the request?
To the second.
He said the second week, right?
Second week.
So let's continue it to the second meeting, which will be the third week.
That would be the 18th.
Perfect. So, I'm sorry? Did you have anything to add?
No, I was just going to say, is that clear to you?
Yes, thank you.
Is there there's
To
going to be
your
no
knowledge,
misunderstanding?
everybody's going to be available November 18th.
Yes.
Okay. So on that basis, could we have a motion to continue to a date certain without further notice?
Mr. Chair, I move that use variance case PVAR 2008-19 and parking use permit PPUP 2009-001 be continued to a date certain November 18th, 2009 without further public notice.
Motion?
I second.
And support. Call roll, please.
Commissioner Sheets,
Aye.
Chair Torgerson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lee,
Aye.
and Chair King.
Aye. On a vote of 4-0, the use variance case PVAR 2008-019 and parking use permit case PPUP 2009-001 is continued to the November 18th meeting without further public notice. Okay. We're moving on to agenda item 7B. It's a tentative parcel map, number GLN 1626. This had been continued from June 17th and August 19th, and we continued it to September 16th because the August 19th meeting had been canceled for lack of quorum, and to allow for a 20-day comment period on the proposed negative declaration of the project. The location is at 1770 Golf Club Drive. The applicant is George Bohogassian. The property owner is Loris Larry Zarian, trustee of the Loris Zarian Living Trust. And it is a request to subdivide a 104,626-foot square lot, it's approximately 2.4 acres, into 3 parcels within the R1R Restricted Residential Zone, Floor Area Ratio District 2. The recommendation is to adopt the proposed negative declaration, PEIF 2009-12, and motion the tentative parcel map GLN 1621 be approved subject to conditions listed in the motion. Staff overview, please.
You actually said half of what I was going to say. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The next item before you is parcel map 1621, a request to subdivide an approximately 104,626 square foot lot into 3 parcels. The project site is located at 1770 Golf Club Drive in the R1R zone. I can go over with you what's on the board if you'd like. Otherwise, I can just proceed.
I suggest you go with what's on the board, please.
Sure.
Since we have at least 2 commissioners that are at the board.
Yeah, you can find room.
All right, you may have to do it in 2 shifts just so we can all crowd them out.
Well, I'll stand to the side here. This is the lot right here. Golf Club Drive is here. And there's an existing house, which is here, an existing pool here, and then a garage and guest house structure right here. What they're wanting to do is create some lots, which one lot here, one lot being here, and then one lot being here. Correct. So this is the parcel map, just the location map is here, zoning map here. The adjacent uses, all of them are single family aside from this area, which is the Chevy Chase Country Club. And then we have some photos here. Okay, as I previously mentioned, the site is located in the R1R zone and has a general plan designation of low-density residential. The property is surrounded by land that is also zoned residential on the north, south, and west, and developed with single-family residences, and zoned SR, which is special recreation, to the east, and developed with the Chevy Chase Country Club. The site is irregularly shaped and has approximately 185 feet of frontage on Golf Club Drive and is approximately, at the deepest point, 420 feet deep. As I mentioned before, the site currently contains an existing single-family house, swimming pool, and detached garage and guest house. The garage and a portion of the guest house will be removed as a result of the project, and a new garage will be constructed attached to the house. After the proposed parcel map, the 3 created lots will be 22,984 square feet, 58,479 square feet, and 23,162 square feet, and will comply with the site area requirements of this zone. And I explain it more fully in the staff report. The Planning Commission must ensure that new lots are compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. Planning staff believes this to be the case, as stated as well in the staff report. We go over it more fully in the staff report. A negative declaration was prepared for the project, and no mitigations were added since no significant impacts were identified. The comment period for this document ended on September 15th of 2009, and no comments were received by this office. As part of today's action, the Planning Commission will need to adopt the negative declaration regarding the project. The site is suitable for the proposed development and is consistent with the surrounding development. Based on this evidence, staff recommends that Planning Commission approve parcel map 1621 with conditions and adopt the negative declaration for the project. That concludes my presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff at this time? Seeing none, all right. Oh, you do? All right.
I think you mentioned somewhere in this that the code allowed for 8 dwelling units per acre in the R1R area. And I would like to see a copy of that part of the municipal code.
It's actually in the general plan. It's the land use element. I think that's what you're referring to.
When was the number of dwelling units per acre for a new tentative tract map as a function of slope removed from the municipal code?
It was not. That part was not. In the general plan, which I can get a copy of, in the land use element, it has a range of, for a low-density residential.
I'm specifically asking about the Glendale Municipal Code, Section 30.
Yeah, that's still in the code. What is being referred to here is the land use element, which is an element of the general plan. Right, under density, land use element, 8 dwelling units per acre max.
For flat land.
I don't believe it distinguishes in the general plan whether it's flat or not. The zoning code has that provision.
Well, I'm not going to approve a tentative tract map that is in conflict with the current municipal code.
It's not in conflict with the municipal code either.
So that's why I'm asking, will you show me what it is, what it says in the municipal code?
Okay, sure.
Slope. There used to be a little table in there.
I'm sorry?
There was a little table.
Yeah, there is, I believe.
R1R.
Table 30.11, I think you're referring to?
Perhaps.
Yeah. Okay, and...
I'm not trying to play gotcha, it's just that I remember things in the municipal code, and I wanted to check that 1.25 dwelling units per 8 dwelling units per acre for the R1R. See if we were consistent.
Right, there are some inconsistencies between land use element and the municipal code. They're not the same. And I think in this case, while the land use element may allow up to 8 dwelling units per acre, in this situation, there'd be no way that this could occur, that 8 units could be developed on this site and meet all the other requirements.
And what does that table say for...
I may be able to clarify a little bit that when we look at the general plan, it's looking citywide at a land use category. And if you look at the range that's allowed, it is up to 8 units per acre for a single-family residential area. However, there's also lots of language in the code, in the general plan, related to hillside development. And so the hillside development standards are located in the zoning code. And that's where you see the relationship then between the density and the slope. And then
I'm sorry, I guess I'm not making my question clear. What does the municipal code say about that, the zoning code say about that?
One house per lot.
No, it has a density
for the
per
density.
acre.
Right, there's a density.
It's
Right,
a density per acre for new tract maps.
There's a sliding chart.
In the zoning code, and it's a sliding chart.
Absolutely.
I'm just asking to see a copy of that.
It's right here.
Can I see a copy of
Sure.
that, please?
Okay, now that's public record, so we have to keep your copy.
I'll make you a copy.
And basically what
Okay,
that code section
so-
says is that you, depending on the average cross slope for each individual, or average current slope for each individual parcel, that's how you determine what the density is, allowable density would be in a subdivision.
Okay, now, so my question is, if it's 1.25 dwelling units per acre, that's what you're representing this tract map's going to be, according to municipal code, table 30.11-C, for 1.25, this average slope of the whole property has to be 35% or less.
And they're at 32.47.
Okay, that was where I was going with that. Okay, for the record, if that's the case, then This is not a problem.
They're actually then under
We want to
the,
get a copy of this?
we do need a copy.
Well, yeah, we can, I'll make a copy.
Part of the record. Thank you.
That'll teach you to hand us paper.
I'm just trying to be complete
Oh,
here.
I'm consistent, yes. Any other questions for staff? I have one question. So this was, the average slope of 3247 was for the existing 104,000 square feet.
Correct.
Has a calculation been made about what the new lot slopes are going to be for the individual properties?
That's a good question, and as you were speaking about the last question, I was going to look. George, but I want to say it's on the map, but...
If it was, I missed it.
Okay. I think Mr. Bogosian...
Here, and the reason that drives it, other than the development will be driven by the slope, is it goes back to the 30,000 square feet, the slope, the 12,000 square foot lots. I mean, it raises the idea that lot number two could conceivably be split in the future yet again, depending on what its slope is and so on.
Okay.
And
I'm not seeing the average current slope of each lot offhand. Let me look some more.
If lot 2 exceeds 30%, it'll never be able to be split under current code.
Let me see that table.
He just gave it back.
Oh, okay.
Here.
Yeah.
It isn't in the... I'll look in the file.
Because
Well, the average current slope, if you're going to subdivide a parcel of land, the average current slope needs to be presented for the entire parcel of land, not individual lots.
That's correct.
The entire parcel
Which?
of land, if the flat spot is 30%, and if you look at the topo map of the rest of it, it's considerably steeper. And so I have doubts that the overall slope of the entire tract would allow 1.25 dwelling units per acre.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm sorry?
Did we get the right page? I'm just making sure you have the right page.
Yeah, it's in there.
Okay.
Read the whole section.
Yes.
Thank you.
I don't want to be picky, but I've spent a lot of time in the past arguing slope density laws, only to be told that, that only applies to new parcel maps,
Like this one.
tract maps. So this
So now
is
that you
my-
have one.
Yes. So now that I have one, I'm not going to let go of it. I want to know what the average density for the entire parcel is. I mean, the average slope for the entire parcel.
They tell us that it's 30.
That's in the staff report.
3247.
I thought I just heard it wasn't for the entire parcel, it was just for the developed portion.
No. That's for the entire parcel.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize, I misunderstood that.
But I'm curious,
Only
once...
Latilla would say, never mind.
Well, what I'm curious about is, here we've broken up this property, and now we can put 3 homes on it. But there's one lot that'll be...
3247, okay.
There'll be one lot that's 58,000 square feet. If it exceeds 30% in slope, they can't divide it, because by code,
they
it
couldn't
has to be
further subdivide it,
30,000.
right.
But if it's less than 30%, they could subdivide it. And I'm just a little curious/apprehensive about that as it relates, going back to densities.
Yeah.
In other words, they could conceivably break that into, I don't know how it would work necessarily with the layout of the lot, but if it's under 30%, they could put 4 more lots on it, if they could figure out a way to get in and lay them out. If it's over 30%.
You're saying Lot 2 could be further subdivided into 4 lots?
If it's under 30%, it could, couldn't it? 12,000 square foot lots.
Let me look at the code on that.
Are you saying this is it forever? You think that's...
This is what they've applied for now.
I know, but what's to say that, 10 years from now, 20 years, whatever?
Correct.
Mr. Bokassian, if you wouldn't mind approaching for a moment, do you happen to know what the average slopes are on the lots after they're divided?
Mr. Chairman, I had submitted that to the Planning Department. They should have in their file. Unfortunately, it's my fault too. I usually show it on the tentative map clearly for entire lot and then separately for each. But on this case, we may have missed it because so many times we make a modification that sometimes some things comes off of we forget to put it back in. So at this point, I don't know. I don't have the file.
And Roger, you're not finding anything on it?
Not yet, but I've still got more to look at.
I have, let me introduce myself, if you don't mind.
You know what? We'll let staff continue their research, and let's have the engineer for the project introduce himself and continue.
Mr. Chairman, members of Commission, and city staff, my name is George Bogosian of Bogosian and Associates. I am the applicant representing the subdivider, the owner, and actually I don't want to reiterate everything what the staff very eloquently has already described to you, except the item that right now before you and we are contemplating. And what I would say is I'd like to ask from the city attorney, if possible, that you could make as a condition, if it is approved, make a condition that lot number 2 cannot be subdivided in the future if the city attorney considers that is illegal to do that.
I'm not sure that it is. Can we do that? Can we impose a condition that lot 2 can never be subdivided in the future?
No, probably not.
Yeah. I'd be a lot happier if you could tell me it was a 31% slope.
Well,
I'm getting there.
Okay.
I'm getting closer. I'm getting hotter.
Right. Well, first, I understand a willingness on your part to say that this is it. Now we just want to protect things for our kids, so to speak.
Definitely, this is actually the lots. The way it's been subdivided, it's called flag lot in effect. So the subdivision of this in the future is very unlikely.
I agree with the thought of unlikely, but...
And most of the slopes, if you notice on the subdivision, 11 by 17, if you have in front of you, if you know it, yes, you will see that lot number 2 contains most of the slopes.
It also contains, to me, most of the flat land. I mean, as I look at it, that's the sweet spot.
It's quite a bit of slope.
Okay, I have the information.
This is the 15th.
It's got the info.
Yeah.
Have the information. Okay, lot 1, 35% and some change. Lot 2, 31 and some change.
Lovely.
And Lot C, 31 and some change.
It's just kind of interesting that we went from 3247, it's 31, 31, 35. The math would be interesting to really challenge. But the point being is we have documentation in the city's hands that show that Lot 2 has a slope of 31%, and under current rules could not be subdivided further because of the 30,000 square foot minimum requirement.
The average size of a of a lot?
Is 12,000. No, the average
Average
is
size of a
30,000.
parcel map.
When you break 30%,
Yeah, except when it's less than 30%, so it goes up to 30%.
so as soon as you're over 30%, the lot would need to be 60,000 square feet to break into two 30,000 square foot parcels.
Right.
We're not there.
Right.
We're at 58 and change, and we're at 31. I'm at peace as it
Okay.
relates to this discussion. What else would you like to
Thank
add,
you
sir?
very much. As you can see, we are not asking for any exceptions. We are fully complying with the subdivision ordinances. And I may also add that we have 23 conditions set by the planning staff for approval of this project. And we have reviewed these conditions, and we will comply fully with all the conditions stated. And beyond that, if you have any questions, I'll be very glad to answer you.
Any questions for the applicants, Rob? Seeing none, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
Any closing remarks from staff?
I don't have any.
All right. Closing the public hearing and asking commissioners to weigh in. Any comments, observations? Seeing none, does someone want to make a motion? Maybe someone that hasn't made one yet.
Nudge, nudge.
I thought you might say that.
I thought it was going to be easy. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make it difficult. We also have to,
You actually need to adopt the negative
as
declaration first.
Is there a separate?
they usually forget to give us a motion for that, on the negative deck.
The wording is, the language is I thought it was already approved by the zoning administrator, and we are voting to adopt it?
Correct.
Mr. Garcia, any special language you'd like to see from us on recognition of a mitigated negative declaration?
Is it a mitigated neg deck or?
No, it's just a neg
Oh,
deck.
I'm sorry, it's a
Proposed negative deck.
There was a resolution attached?
No.
We probably continued the tradition and not submitted that.
Okay.
The negative declaration was attached.
It's an odd tradition, but a tradition nonetheless.
It should be, well, then I would ask for a motion certifying and adopting the negative declaration.
Which we can do just by referencing the count, okay?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Torgerson.
I would like to make a motion certifying and adopting the proposed negative declaration, PEIF number 2009-0112, regarding Golf Club Drive parcel map, 1770 Golf Club Drive.
Mr. Chair, can I add to that briefly?
You certainly may.
Sorry, and finding that there's no substantial evidence that the project will have a significant impact on the environment.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to amend what I just said with what he just said.
Fair enough.
The workings of government. Would someone like to actually second that?
Second.
We have a motion in support for the proposed negative declaration. Call roll, please.
Commissioner Sheets.
Aye.
Commissioner Torgerson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lee.
Aye.
Chair Kane.
Aye, and a vote of 4-0, the proposed negative declaration, PEIF 2009-012, has been certified, acknowledged, recognized, and blessed. Now we're ready for the second motion on this case.
I would like to move that upon consideration of tentative parcel map number GLN 1621, and after reviewing the records, files, reports, and all documentary evidence submitted with regard to said tentative parcel map, the tentative parcel map number GLN 1621 is hereby approved, subject to the compliance with the State Subdivision Map Act, Title 16 of the Glendale Municipal Code, and the 23 additional conditions listed below, and that the Planning Commission hereby makes each and all of the following findings of fact. Do I need to go through those, or as stated?
As stated by staff, I think it's fine.
Following findings of facts as stated in the motion.
Before I seek a second, the motion is for 1621. The agenda references 1626. What was the advertisement?
I will check.
Which is correct?
Or is it
I will check. I'm sorry. I thought I had corrected all
It is
that.
1770.
It's for 1626.
The advertisement was 1626. This should be 1626, so the motion should be amended to GLN 16.
I would amend the motion as stated, that upon consideration of tentative parcel map number GLN 1626, as opposed to map number GLN 1621.
Seeking support?
Second.
Motion and support. Call roll, please.
Commissioner Sheets,
Aye.
Commissioner Torgerson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lee,
Aye.
Chair King.
Aye, and a vote of 4-0, tentative parcel map number GLN 1626 has been approved. All right. We're moving on to the last item of business. Gentlemen, you're all right to proceed? All right. We're going with use variance case number PVAR 2009-029. It's 1304, 1308, and 1310 South Brand Boulevard, and 110 and 116 East Cypress Street. Excuse me. APN 4540 016-02, 03, 004, 005, 009, 010, and 033. Roger, the last time you seemed kind of hurt that I read so much. Was there more that you wanted to...
I'm not hurt. I'll read it again.
Applicant's Lyle Hudson, the property owner is Subaru of America, and it's a use variance to locate two storage structures at the dealership in the R2250, DD, and PSD zones. And the recommendation is to approve the use variance case.
My spiel is a little bit longer this time, so you didn't quite cover half of it. Good evening again, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. The next item before you is PVAR 2009-026. It's a use variance request to locate storage structures at the Subaru automobile dealership in the R2250, DD, and PSD zones. The project site is located at 1304, 1308, 1310 South Brand Boulevard and 110 and 116 East Cypress Street. Let me go over with you what's on the board. Okay, this is the site plan here. Brand Boulevard is here. The two storage structures that they're proposing are right here and right here. So the southeast portion of the site. The building, the new Subaru dealership will be right here. This is actually, it's on a corner lot. Cypress is here, Brand is here. The storage structures are here. Picture of the existing storage structures, what you'll be looking at tonight, a location map. This is actually the elevations of this building, and then some photos of the site. Okay, as I previously mentioned, the applicant has filed a use variance application to locate two storage structures on the site of a new Subaru automobile dealership. Automobile parts storage for an automobile dealer is not a permitted use in the R2250 DD PSD zones. The subject site is approximately 35,000 square feet in size and developed with a two-story building located in the center of the site. The storage structures are proposed in the southeast corner of the site, which again is located in the R2250 DD and PSD zone. Ordinance 5644 adopted March 3rd, 2009 requires that use variances be reviewed by the Planning Commission. It's a relatively new thing. Planning staff believes that all of the findings for the variance can be made in a positive manner regarding the project and recommends that the Planning Commission approve the request. Strictly applying the provisions of the ordinance, in this case prohibiting storage from the dealership in a residential zone, would result in a practical difficulty or an unnecessary hardship inconsistent with the intent of the ordinance. The R2250 zone is intended for residential development, while the DD and the PSD zones are designed for commercial development. Complying with the intent of each of these zones would be impossible. The combination of the underlying zone and the overlay zones, however, is designed to provide a transition between commercial uses or commercial development along South Brand Boulevard and the residential uses located within the interior lots or the interior blocks. Further, this zoning was assigned many years ago with the realization that automobile dealerships were getting larger. Allowing the proposed structures provides an appropriate transition from the automobile sales and service functions in the western portion of the site and the multifamily residential uses east of the subject site. The exceptional circumstance applicable to the subject site is that the eastern 40 feet of the site is zoned R2250 with a DD and the PSD overlay zones. And these overlay zones are relatively unique in the city. These areas are only located in the South Brand Boulevard specific plan where, as intended, they enable commercial development to expand adjacent to South Brand Boulevard. The granting of the variance should not be materially detrimental to the public or injurious to the property or on-site improvements. The proposed structures will be used for part storage for the automobile dealership. This type of use should not generate significant amount of noise. Additionally, because of its location and height, the structures should not be very visible. Both structures were located on the site without proper approvals or permits when the previous business was operating on the site, and no complaints were received as a result of these structures. So the pictures, the picture posted on the board are the structures, and they've been there for quite a while with the previous use, and have not generated, any complaints according to neighborhood services. Again, the Planning Department recommends approval of the variance with the conditions listed in the staff report, and that concludes my presentation.
Who was the hearing officer on the variances?
The zoning administrator.
So Ms. Fuentes was.
Right.
Do you know why and I'm guessing just as I look at the plan, why not the residential, the decorative masonry wall buffer between residential and this property? Because is there already an 8-foot wall there?
No. What the code requires, and this was from the variance heard in May or June of this year, what the code requires is a wall between the CACS zone and residential zones.
Oh, so it's on the setback, okay, or in that area.
The zone boundary is right here.
Total sense.
The R2250 to the right.
Right. This is R2250. This is the CACS. So the variance request was to not have the wall here.
And where are they going to put the storage structures?
They already are.
Here and here.
And they're already there, aren't they?
I don't believe they are located in the exact positions that they're proposing, that they have here, but they have been located on the site.
Well, this was unusual only because the property has different zones going through it, so I understand the variance now. Okay. Anything else?
I'm done.
All right.
Ready for questions if you have any.
Questions from the commission?
I have this document, the Planning Department Planning Commission staff report from you. I'm just curious, it goes on to second page stapled. And it's No other city departments. The last paragraph has a sentence that is incomplete and a missing page. And that
Okay.
was suspenseful. I was just getting to where it was getting good.
I'm sorry about that.
Oh, he doesn't have the last page?
Maintaining the electric utility easement on the southern property line
Now I can sleep tonight.
and complying with the facility access requirements. Sorry about
I was
that.
so worried about that. And I'm not trying to be
These are
picky.
little things that staff does just to see if we read.
I'm just proving that I read this stuff.
Well, that's great. That's what we hope you do.
I have no further questions.
Any other questions for staff?
I guess there was just one question. It's not clear to me how the relocation, let's call it, of these storage bins would impact the parking relative to, are there parking requirements?
Well, that's under consideration.
One of the storage storage structures will be located in a parking space.
Okay. But that was covered by the variance or not?
It was covered by the parking reduction.
Which is still under consideration.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I have 3 speaker cards. The first card I have is Ken Hills. Hits?
Ken Hits.
You know, I wasn't sure. I said, is he crossing T's or is that just
That's
bad
my fault.
penmanship? Okay.
That's my fault. Good evening, Commission members and staff. My name's Ken Hitz. I'm Economic Development Manager with the Development Services Department, City of Glendale. Glendale Development Services has been working with the Brand Boulevard of Cars, as you're probably aware, for a number of years. That courtesy is also extended to our current applicant. We like to just say that we support this use variance. In this given economy, the welcome addition of a new car dealership is certainly great for Glendale in terms of the new investment, new jobs, as well as the new sales tax that we see generated for the city. So we just want to say we support the use variance. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next card I have is Lyle Hudson.
Good evening, and it is evening. It's not nighttime yet, I don't think, not too late. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I am the applicant. My name is Lyle Hudson with Hudson & Partners. We are the architect for the project. Again, as it's been said earlier tonight, staff has done a great job kind of explaining everything, and it is a bit difficult when you're looking at so many different parcels and the reason for that. But I think you got right to it at the end, that we have a situation where we have a residential zone that is a part of this facility that is actually our parking lot. It was the parking lot originally for the developed site. What we're asking for this evening is the ability to put these 2 storage containers on site legally that were there when the property which was purchased. It allows us to utilize the site better without building additional square footage and additional height and adding additional mass to the structure that's there, and allowing us to meet current requirements for Subaru of America that has been imposed on the dealer for the amount of storage that they need to have. So the extra, while it doesn't seem like much, the site is very tight, and the additional 400 square feet makes our ability to utilize the site more efficiently. And just briefly on the parking aspect of it, I think the parking is portion of this is that we actually have parking spaces for this. There was an additional, the additional 400 square feet requires us to have 1 additional parking space as if it were built space. This is temporary modular space and can be moved if needed, but we are providing the additional parking required for that and still meeting our parking requirement on site. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions as it relates to.
All right, questions for the speaker? Okay, so I have one. There's already a 3,360 square foot addition being constructed, approved by variance, correct?
Correct.
I don't know if it's actually being constructed, but
It is being constructed at this point in time, and I don't believe that there was a variance for that structure.
There wasn't a variance for the actual structure, but as a result of the whole project, there was the variance on the block wall.
the block wall and so on.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of peripheral. Why not make that a 3,760 square foot thing and get rid of the modular storage units?
And a very good question. I mean, the way the building was constructed on the site originally, because we were utilizing an existing building on site and adding to it. What this building did not have that we needed were service stalls and a storage area for parts to help facilitate the service. Given the dimensions of the lot and the dimensions of the parking area back behind, we were limited to how far we could expand the building to the east. So we pushed the building to the east as far as we could in order to get the parts department and the service bays. So building additional square footage would have been building on the second, building up and adding second floor square footage, which really wasn't that feasible for access to parts, making the building higher, making a bigger volume. We also had design review to deal with and not wanting to impose additional height to the neighbors, so we kept the addition all at a single-story level. And yet we still had, and quite frankly, the pods were on site at the time. We did find out later that they were not a permitted use, and but the building was evaluated early on with the additional 400 square feet.
Were they empty when you opened them?
I never opened them.
Has anyone opened them?
I believe so.
Okay. Yeah, you can imagine the surprises you might find. Okay. All right. Any other questions for this speaker? Not at this time. Thank you, sir. And the last speaker card I have is Stephen Gale.
Evening. I'm Stephen Gale. I'm a director of corporate real estate for Subaru of America, and I'm very appreciative of the job that staff has done and the support they've given us throughout this process and the prior processes getting to this point in construction that we have achieved to date. I will not take more of your time. It was important for me to be here to let you know that the project was important enough for me to come 2,500 miles, so that if I'm going to ask you to treat it as important, you need to see that we treat it as important as well. The only other comment that I'll make, unless you have questions for me, is that when we did assess the site, we errantly believed that we had those two pods available to us. We sized the building accordingly. We were well into the planning stage and toward the end of the planning stage when we realized the folly of our ways and time to market when you're sitting on a multi-million-dollar property and have others to answer for became very important. We pulled that piece off, moved on, and tried to do it correctly, and that's why we're here in front of you tonight. If there's any questions I can answer, I'd be happy to do so.
Seeing none at this time. All right, thank you, sir. Thank you. I have no other speaker cards, closing remarks from staff.
I have none.
All right, I'll close the public hearing and enter into deliberations with the commission. Comments, gentlemen?
Oh, no,
We welcome Subaru.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You were saying something?
No, go ahead.
He was, but it was actually...
We both talked in stereo.
He's got 2 ears.
Mr. Lee, could I ask you to repeat that,
Oh,
please?
I was just making a comment that we welcome Subaru into our city, and I hope that you to be a contributing and good partner with our city. And I have no other comments.
Well, I asked one of my colleagues at work if Subaru was still giving him problems and how he liked it overall, and should we make them bury their parts in the front yard. And he said no, he liked his Subaru, and everything was happy. So I'd like to welcome Subaru here as well. If there's any questions I can answer, I'd be happy to do so.
Seeing none at this time. All right, thank you, sir. I have no other comments. All right, thank you, sir.
And it's the only comment I have. It's too bad they couldn't accommodate that in the new building with a new addition, but understanding how it is going through that process in the design review board.
Those crazy cats on the design review board.
Yeah. Wacky architects. So we're easier.
Anything to add, Mr. Sheets?
I just echo the comments. Appreciate the efforts to try to make things right, and welcome to town.
I'll just say two things. One, that from the Subaru owners that I've known, it's a cult, but it's not a dangerous one.
They are weird, though.
Yeah. And but I have to say that I'm against modular units. I don't think that's a good application. And I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that variances are being granted you. That the staff, the city's trying to work with you. But philosophically, semi-trailers without wheels under them are just not a good thing to see on a site, no matter how new or how well they're kept up. So that's my philosophy on it. But that said, unless there's something else, we'll push out a motion, see how it falls.
I think he mentioned that it was not intended. I mean, it was something that in the process they discovered, so yeah. We can forgive.
I'm sorry? These things that you say right at the end.
I make the motion.
And then you don't want to repeat them, so I'm not.
Would you like to?
There is the possibility of a condition that the modular units not be visible from Brand.
Well,
behind the wall.
I don't know how you can. Yeah.
Well,
I share your disdain for modular trailers without wheels or shipping. I won't say Maersk on the side and put it on a boat, ship it back somewhere. But
Do you have? I'm going to reopen the hearing, and whether it's the architect or someone else. I'm curious what you're doing as far as signage. What's happening in that corner? Is it just the trailers? Is it what's happening as that abuts the residential zone?
Lyle Hudson, representing Subaru Hudson and Partners. Both containers where they're shown to be located, are not visible from Brand Boulevard. They're totally blocked by the main portion of the building. There are two block walls that are at the property lines in that corner down there that essentially hide the containers from the adjacent property to the south, which is a commercial building and parking area. So they're not visible at that point. The part of what we had done here is the landscape strip that is to it's the eastern property line that borders the residential development. One of the containers, or actually both of them, were pushed all the way up to the edge of that block wall at the time. What we've done is we've maintained, or we have restored the 10-foot landscape buffer between the residential neighborhood and where we're putting the containers. So we've restored that buffer that had been taken away. There are existing live trees there, large trees, and again the 10-foot landscape buffer so that they're not visible from the residential neighborhood, in addition to the block wall that's there. And then again, from Cypress, what you would end up seeing is a row of parked cars in front, and they would be the very last parking stall where that container is to be located. So while there is a little more height there, it wouldn't look anything different than a truck parked in the last parking stall to the south of the property. So they're located in the very back corner, away from Brand and away from Cypress.
One of them is is that a new concrete pad?
Correct. We are relocating the storage pod that is in the landscape buffer, actually both of them, but the one pulling it all the way out and putting it on a concrete pad so that it's separate and not in a parking stall at that location.
And the other one is sitting on asphalt?
The other one, at this point in time, they've been moved for construction purposes on site. But it is anticipated that that be located in the very last parking stall, tandem parking stall.
And that's an asphalt.
And that's an asphalt parking lot. So it at some point in time could be moved and that parking stall.
Do you happen to know, is that like 3-inch over 6-inch? Do you happen to know the
It's
aggregate
actually it's the existing section that's there now. It'll be slurred in, I believe, out in front. We know that it's over a 4-inch section, the largest section in front, and I'm not sure what the back section is.
Okay. And is the plan to run electricity to these for interior lighting?
No.
So they won't be powered or anything else?
No.
Okay. Well, I guess you've done what you can with it.
Yeah, they're anticipated for overflow part storage for the dealership to make up the square footage required by for the dealer to have a certain amount of square footage of parts.
Required by the gentleman that came all the way from the East Coast.
From the East Coast.
In a Subaru.
Yeah.
He did drive a Subaru. To be perfectly fair, he did drive a Subaru today.
You know, it's late in the evening. Did you purchase carbon offsets for your travels? I mean, so anyway. All right.
I am our National Environmental Management Representative.
Wow. That couldn't be heard over the microphone. So since you testified, basically the Subaru representative indicated he's heavily involved with the environmental concerns of his company. Okay. Enough
Actually,
of that. I'm going to.
Could I also quickly interject? The project will also need to go to the design review board.
Okay.
So they
All
may
right.
require.
We're pussycats compared to them.
You can have it.
You're just going to be moving out here, I'll tell you.
Respectfully been there.
Is this no, it's not a redevelopment agency, so it's truly design and review board. It's not council is
Correct.
acting. Okay.
Correct.
All right, I'm going to close the public hearing yet again and ask for a motion unless there's further comments or deliberations from.
It's his turn.
Oh, my turn.
He can't find his glasses. Okay.
I move that upon review and consideration of all materials and exhibits of a current record relative to use variance case number PVAR 2009-026, located at 1304, 1308, and 1310 South Brand Boulevard, and 110 and 116 East Cypress Street, and after having conducted a hearing on said matter, that the Planning Commission hereby approves said use variance case number PVAR 2009-026 in accord with the findings set forth below. Do I have to read all these 4 findings? Or do I
As
just...
stated in the staff report?
As stated, okay. As A, B, C, D findings, and with the conditions 1 through 6.
Okay, before we call motion, I have to say this again. Okay, the motion talks about 2009-026, and our agenda talks about 2009-029.
Yeah. I'm
if I
sorry
do
about
nothing
that.
else for this process.
Who's on first?
I guess we
It's
renotice and have to go back out? No.
No. I'm sorry about this. It should be 029,
Okay.
because that's the latest.
At least I'm catching it before the seconds. Because then you'd have to remove, the rules of order just get so complicated. So you'll modify your motion to reference 029.
Yes, modified to reference the case number to PVAR 2009-029.
Right.
With findings of ABCD and also conditions of 1 through 6.
Is it just 6 conditions? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I thought maybe I was missing a page.
It's in the back.
All right. We have motion support, please.
A second.
Motion support. Call roll, please.
Commissioner Sheets,
Aye.
Commissioner Torgerson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lee,
Aye.
Chair Kane,
No. On a vote of, and I have the luxury of saying no because the motion's passing. I hate to get in the way, but it just goes back to the storage container philosophy. On a vote of 3-1, the use variance case PVAR 2009-029 has been approved. And I suppose I need to say where is that? Anyone not happy with this finding or with this result can file an appeal, and I've lost all that formal. Nice little statement. All right. Any individual not satisfied with the Commission's decision may file an appeal to the City Council. This is done by filing a notice of appeal along with a filing fee at the Building and Safety Section Permit Centers located on this floor. An appeal must be filed within 15 days. All right. We're moving on to the end of the agenda items. And it is Planning Department updates, please.
We just wanted to let you know that the council is starting their process for reappointments for members of boards and commissions other than the DRB, and I believe that Mr. Lee and Mr. Kane were nominated last night.
I'm sorry, who?
They were I believe that you were nominated last night for Chang Lee, and was nominated, I believe, by Mr. Weaver. And then, Mr. Kane, you were nominated by Mr. Draymond, yeah. So
I'm glad to hear that.
And we should say there were only 3 council members there last night at the last night's meeting. That's why they were all nominated.
yeah.
All right. Well, good. I'm glad to hear that.
And then we also did hear that Mr. Berman is no longer on the commission.
All right. Decision letters were attached. Okay. Have any of the decision letters cleared the appeal process period?
I don't know offhand.
Okay.
Offhand, I know that we haven't had an appeal filed recently within the last week.
Is 1372 Opeachy Way beyond the appeal period?
I'd have to check. I'm not sure.
The decision letter is September 23rd.
Probably not. It's a 15-day appeal period.
So it's in the neighborhood. I just was curious if it had been appealed. All right.
I did have one point.
Yes, please.
I think it was Chairman Kane had brought up an item about the monument in the front of the apartments in La Crescenta. La Crescenta and Honolulu or one of those streets.
Montrose.
Yeah. It's I drove by. It's not finished. So I'm not sure if it's in the state that it was in when we discussed it, or they've been working on it, but it looks like nothing's been done to me.
Actually, they did. You know what? They had 2 posts there with the bare concrete. Now, looks like it's in a little bit better finished state right now. So they are working on it.
So, okay.
All right.
Just observation.
Okay. And I don't know that this is really a planning commission thing, but I sure shake my head at that medical office building on the south end of Montrose and wonder what the heck
That's your design
happened
review board.
with that process. Were there variances granted for that property? Nothing ever came in front of us that I
I don't believe there were
recall.
any variances, and it did receive design review board approval.
Yes. So we didn't do anything wrong on our end.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. And we didn't even have a chance to. So.
It wasn't your fault.
Next meeting is a special time, 4 p.m.
Yes, October 21st is a special meeting starting at 4, and right now there are, I believe, 7 items on the agenda. So it will definitely be a full agenda, and the reason for that is just because we had 2 meetings where everything was continued, and we didn't want to pile everything on tonight, so that's why we're looking at another meeting that's also heavy.
All right, and everyone anticipates being able to make that, I'm guessing. Great. Any other comments from commissioners, please? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
By assent.